Hello everyone, I am Nerdstalgic, and this is part 2 of the sorted episode involving alching for your Regal recipe. Now, in our first episode, we spent some alchemy orbs on some various necklaces, rings, and belts. And we did identify a few items that we felt might be worth price checking on Poe.trade. Now, Poe.trade, for those of you who are unfamiliar, is basically a website aggregator for the Path of Exile forums. And what it does is it pulls the prices that are listed for items off of those forums. So if you're wanting to buy something or sell something, it can be a very good tool for you to get just an idea of what it might be worth. Now, it's not going to be hard and fast, this is what it's worth, because as with anything, really what it's worth is what somebody is willing to pay for it. So you have to take what you find on there with a little bit of a grain of salt, but it can be very useful as a tool. So we are going to be checking on some of these items. Now, the best way to go about doing this is not to input all of the affixes yourself. So let me show you. Alright, let me reset this. So let's say I've got a ring, and I want to see other rings that are listed for, what they're pricing them at that have the same affixes as mine. Now what you could do is you could come up here and you set ring, and then you come down here and you can tell it, oh, I'm looking for this mod and this mod and this mod and this mod. And that's going to take you forever. It's much, much simpler and easier to make use of the import item data function. So what you do, and it tells you exactly how to do it. It says to import an item, hover over it in game, and press Control C. And what that does is it copies the affixes and mods that are on that item, and then inside of this box, you just simply hit Control V, and then you hit import, and it will try to fill as many of those affix fields as it can. Normally it does a pretty good job. About the only time that I've ran into problems with it is with certain implicits, and also right now with jewels it's kind of busted. So let's go ahead and do some checking. So I'm going to go back to scene 1 here, and I'm going to open up my inventory. And so we wanted to check on this amulet, right? So I'm going to hover over it and hit Control C. And then I come over here and I hit Control V and import. And it takes a few seconds. Now, sometimes the site does go down, or it might just kind of crap out, and you might have to wait for a while or refresh it. So get used to seeing this screen. Normally whenever you import things, what it's going to do is it's going to actually check for an item that is exactly the same or better than the one that you have. Because of the fact that there are just so many different combinations of affixes on items, generally whenever you import an item, it's not going to find anything. So you're going to have to go in and you're going to have to trim down some of these explicit mods. As you can see, it's a whole whack of them. So what you're basically doing when you do this is you're distilling down the essence of your item to the things that matter. So you're going to be eliminating things that people just don't give a shit about, and you're going to be leaving the things that people will care about. So this physical attack damage leeches mana, we can leave it on for now, but we might have to peel that thing off. People don't care about the number of elemental resistances necessarily, so we're going to get rid of that. We're going to get rid of that. We're going to get rid of that. And we're going to get rid of the specific resistances. The life roll is so low it doesn't matter. Damage to attacks, we are going to specify physical damage to attacks. The mana roll is too low. All attributes, even though it does matter, we're probably going to go ahead and peel that off. So now we've distilled this necklace down to really what makes it click. And this can also be a very illuminating tool that, you know, I've used and I've found it illuminating. When you maybe are overvaluing an item, if you go into here and you trim this down and it ends up only having very few things, it can be a great way for you to go, hold on, this isn't worth anything. So at the heart of this, really the only thing that makes this thing worth anything is the fact that it does have a decent amount of resist and it adds some physical damage to attacks. Now I'm going to go ahead and turn on buyout only because we're looking for a price, right? And then I'm going to hit search. And we have to wait. And it found one item that is similar or better than ours. Unfortunately, this person has a fixed price of 0 chaos, which means that they don't know how to price it, and they just want to get it out in front of everybody else. So if we look at this item, it is clearly better than the one that we have. It has plus to all elemental resistances, has a good one here. Also has some increased item rarity. Now it is on a really bad base though. Really bad base. So we're just going to take this leech off and then search again. And we should probably find a lot of matches now. Yeah. You can look right over here. There's a ton. And if we click on that, it will order them in order from least expensive to most expensive. And it is returning some gloves, so we probably want to go up here and tell it, no, we're just looking for rings, bro. And then we'll resort it again. Now, normally, if you do a search and you see this, the bar is very long, you know that it's probably not worth very much. And you can see there's a lot of them that are, priced at nothing. And then we're starting to get into, one alch. Lots of them are for one alch. These might be some that people have in their chaos recipe, maybe. 8 alterations, a fuse. So, it's not, but these are also, wait, we're not looking at rings. We're looking at an amulet. Whoops. My bad. I just got so carried away with the rings for some reason. Okay, so we still have a lot of results here. We're looking at 1 chaos here for this one. It's kind of a mess, Now, something you have to keep in your mind at this point, though, is that we did take off the leech, which isn't insignificant. And we do have plus 16 to all attributes. So, just kind of looking through here, a lot of these aren't necessarily better than the one that we have. Now, generally, I don't advocate crafting anything onto an item for the purpose of making it look better to sell, generally. Normally, I like to leave those affixes open so that the buyer can actually put whatever they want on there without having to scour it. In my opinion, whenever you actually just go and put an affix on it, unless it's a very, very obvious affix that needs to go on it. Say like you have a weapon with like 200% IPD that has 5 mods on it, but it's got 1 mod open for flat damage. That's obvious. It's a no-brainer. Stick the flat damage on it. But for items like rings and necks and to a lesser extent even belts, you probably want to leave those open because there's just a lot of different builds out there, and if you pigeonhole it, somebody's going to look at that and they're going to go, do I want to spend a scouring on it? Probably not. Or, yeah, on the bench. You can scour it with a level 7 master. Anyways, so I'm looking here. I'm going to look back at I've got it on my screen, the amulet. So, I'm going to take it over to the bench just to see what could go on it. Life could go on it. Stats could go on it. It could take a third resist. So that brings me to my next. I mean, there's a whole slew of things that can go on this thing. Increased item rarity can get crafted onto it. Critical strike chance can get crafted onto it. I mean, there's a lot of stuff. So what I might do is I might, in this kind of a situation, I might go in here and I can craft between 21 to 25% more resist onto it. So let's just bump this up to 100 and see what, just if we did that, what would that bump up the price to? Now, I'm not saying to do that. I'm just saying do it just to see what those kinds of things are going for. So immediately you see an increase in price. Immediately. Now we're looking at this one's 5C, but if you look at it, it's got less stats than ours, and it doesn't have the leech that ours has. So I'm thinking that necklace with that open affix like that, it's not bad. It's not bad at all. We may be, to the right buyer, we might be able to sell that, I'm thinking, for, I'm going to price it just as a starting price, because remember, you can always drop the price if it doesn't sell, but if it sells quickly, you can't raise the price on them. So you typically want to start a little high unless you're just hurting for money. I'm going to actually start that necklace out at probably, it's kind of tough. It's kind of tough. Through here, look at some more. I mean, the price quickly starts jumping up. I'm probably going to list this at 20C and just see if it sells. Now, I don't actually sell anything in Chaos at this point. And I've kind of mentioned that in the last video. So, actually, I'm going to price it at 40 fuse. And if it doesn't sell in about a week, then what I'll do is I'll mark it down. Probably mark it down from 40 fuse to maybe 30 fuse or even 20 fuse. The thing you have to keep in mind is as the league goes on, items like this one that are kind of in a kind of a hazy area of it might be good but it's not great, those are going to lose value the most. Players are going to be attritioning away from the game, and better loot's going to be getting found because more people are in the higher level maps, so more loot's getting generated. So you have to keep that in mind. 40 fuse is probably a pretty aggressive price for that item, but it just takes one person to see that and need it. Our next item is another Onyx Amulet, and it's the one that had that really delicious spell damage cast speed combo meal on it. So let's drop that in there and start peeling off some of those affixes. Nothing was found. What a surprise. So let's go ahead and tell it, hey, this is an amulet. And we're going to take off the mana gained on kill. Oh, excuse me. The resistance is so low that it's negligible. So let's just peel the resistances off. We'll leave the energy shield on. The life we'll leave on. And when it comes to spell damage, I typically just take off the specific spell damage types and just leave the overarching spell damage on it. So I'm going to take off fire spell damage, lightning spell damage, and cold spell damage, but I'm going to leave this just increased spell damage on it. We'll take off the mana, but we are going to leave on the cast speed. We're going to go ahead and take off the attributes, so we'll have to peel all of that off, and the life resist. So again, we have what is at the core of this amulet, what makes it decent. And we might also have to take off that energy shield too. So we found some results, and if you look, doesn't look like there's a whole lot here, guys. Yeah, so the lowest one here is 50 chaos. And it is also full on affixes, just like ours. So let's just kind of compare them. Well, ours has 13% spell damage. This one has 17%, so it beats us there. Has 21 int, so that is more than ours, but it has less strength, and it doesn't have any dex. Ours has dex on it. And for a caster, dex can be one of the hardest ones to get. Dex and strength, I mean, most casters end up, either needing one or the other, so an Onyx Amulet can be pretty good. The cast speed is better. The life is better. The life regen per second is kind of meh. And it also has energy shield on it that's better than ours. The only thing ours has that is different than this one is ours also has +3 mana gain on kill, which isn't too bad. Comparing these two to each other, this one here, I'm gonna say is definitely better. It's better than the one we have, basically because the spell damage, the cast speed, and the life put ours kind of in the dirt. But this is a pretty good guide point to what we have, because there's just not a whole lot on the market right now that has that combo of spell damage, cast speed, and life. It's just not there. And then when you add the energy shield on top of it, it narrowed it down to 3 out of the whole market. So if I'm going to price this, and I'm being aggressive with it, I'm probably going to go ahead and list this. We'll say, I'm tempted to say 50 fuse, 25C, but I think it's just a little bit low for that. So we're going to go 40 fuse, just like the other necklace. Now, right there, remember how many chaos we spent? We only spent 17. If even one of these sells, we've more than made back our money, because 40 fuse is equivalent to about easily equivalent to 20C. So if we sold both of them, then we'd have 80 fuse. Well, you can sell 120 fuse for an X pretty easily these days. That's 2/3 of an X, just off those two necklaces. But chances are they probably won't both sell for 40 fuse. I'll have to lower the price down. We'll see. Okay, so those were the two amulets. Now let's look at the rest. We'll start off with the Skull Circle. Okay, fair enough. So we'll tell it rings. It's a ring. And we're going to leave the accuracy on. It's a good roll. The resistance isn't good enough for us to factor into the price, I don't think. We're going to leave the crit chance on. We will... this is a little tricky. Normally I don't leave the elemental damage on. But I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave the overarching damage on there, and I'm going to take this off. And I'm going to take that off. Normally, whenever it's critical strike chance, I just leave the global on. And now we're going to look. So this one does have some empty affixes. And it didn't find anything. So let's take off the adds damage to attacks. Okay. We've got one result. and it's an X. But if you compare our rings, the damage is similar. The physical damage is similar. This one's accuracy is better. The evasion on that is completely negligible. It does have just a skosh of physical damage leash, and the person benched on cold resist onto it. Okay, so our ring is arguably just as good as this ring, because if I go over here to the bench, and I'm not showing this on the screen, but I can put life on it. It'll take stats. It'll It'll take all attributes. It'll take another resist. It'll take IRR. It would take increased critical strike chance. So this ring has a lot of options available to somebody who's in the market for a more... This is not a defensive ring. This is a ring for somebody who has their defenses set and is looking for a little bit of firepower. Do I think that the ring that we have is worth an X? That's a good question. Personally, I don't think so. I don't think it's worth an X. But, am I going to list it for an X? Sure. Why not? As long as I'm dutiful about repricing my items, it doesn't matter that much. So I'm going to drop it into the X tab, and if it sells for an X, beautiful. If it doesn't, we'll mark it down. And we'll probably mark it down fairly aggressively. We won't be dropping it down like just little increments. I'd probably take it from, say, 1x, maybe down to like 70 or 60 fuse, and just to try to get rid of it. And I'm going to make this trade because, even though I'm making a video, kind of makes sense. You know, trading never stops. Never should stop. Never should stop. You should always be trading, always be trying to make some money. I mean, that's why you're watching my video, right? You're not watching it just because I have a beautiful voice and I'm so funny. You're probably watching it as a new player trying to get an idea of how to make some extra money. Well, you want to know how to make some extra money? Trade. Be around. Make yourself available. All right. So, back to it. So far, everything that we had a hunch on being worth anything actually has priced up fairly well. Let's see if that trend continues. Our next ring that we're going to be kind of trying to suss out a price for is a sapphire ring. So it's got cold resistance on it. Okay, and it found a chest. No, that's not what I'm looking for. We'll leave the evasion roll on there simply because it's very high. That's a very high +2 evasion roll. The resists, we will peel off the specific parts of the resist and just leave the total. We will leave this energy shield on it, and we'll also leave the mana. This ring is full on affixes, so there's no amount of bench crafting that can change this ring. About the only thing you could do to this ring technically would be to veil orbit. So it did return 2 results, and the 2 results, the lowest being 25 chaos and the highest being 1.5x. So let's compare our ring. The first ring here, Loathhold Topaz ring. It's a lightning based ring with some accuracy on it, a good evasion roll, better mana than ours, about the same energy shield, and it has more resistances than ours does. Is there anything that separates our ring from that one? Not particularly. That ring is pretty clearly superior to our ring, basically because of the accuracy roll and also because the resistances are better. Our ring has a grand total of 60, 72, 80 resist on it, whereas this one has 111. So that is pretty telling in terms of, you know, how much is our ring worth? Is it worth 25C? No, not even close. Our ring, I'm going to price it for starters, and this is a pretty aggressive price. I'm going to price it at 20 fuse. Basically a 10C equivalent. But keep in mind, we only invested 17C in this whole operation. So even a modest sell at 10C is putting us ahead. Okay, our next ring is a 2-stone. Nothing found, not a surprise. Little ring-a-ling. So it's got 2 very good resists on it. We'll leave the energy shield. We will leave the physical damage to attacks because it's not bad. And we'll even leave the dexterity on there because the dexterity, could be good for somebody. Now, they found a few results. Now, ours does have room for some crafting on it. So the lowest one here, it says, is 0.5 of an X. The next one is 35C. Keeping in mind, though, that Poe.trade, the way that it orders items, I think it's still operating kind of on the ratio of 1x being about 40 chaos. So currently on warbands, you can sell an X for about 72C fairly easily. So 0.5 of an X would be about equivalent with that second ring. So let's compare the rings. The second ring does have room for a craft on it. The first one is full. Okay, so the physical damage on the first ring is better. The dexterity is better. It has mana on it. Ours does not. Maximum energy shield is better, and it has a very good lightning resist roll compared to our very good cold resist roll. In fact, our ring has 59% cold resist on it, which could be a fixer ring for somebody, And when I use that term, what I mean is a lot of times, you'll be gearing out your character and you need a ring with a very specific resistance on it. And, hey, if somebody needs cold resistance, this ring could give it to them, and they wouldn't be sacrificing a ton of damage doing it because it does have that physical damage on there, and it could also fix dexterity problems for somebody as well. The second ring has a much better physical damage roll than ours, better dexterity, better mana, better maximum energy shield, and it is the resistances are more equally spread out. Now, if we look on the bench over here, which you can't see this, but I've got it. That's somebody I just sold to, I think. This ring could take life. Could take stats, it could take another resist, so there's a lot of options for this ring. And he wants to buy haste. See, he's messaging me because he knows I'm around. Actually, I think I have a haste in overflow. Don't sell it out of the window, sell it out of the back room. And you'll get a lot of, as long as you're friendly with people and you respond to them, you will find that you see a lot of the same faces. People will come back to you when they see you over other names, even if it's the same price, because they know with you that they can get a good quick trade. So, all right. So this ring of ours has a lot to offer for somebody. It could be made to be more defensive. It could also be made to be more offensive. So it's not a bad ring at all. What to price it at, though? That's the real question. I'm thinking that this ring, we could probably start it off at, I'm going to say 50 fuse. And then if it doesn't sell, I would probably drop it to 40. I don't see this ring going for any cheaper than 20 fuse, to be honest. Yeah, it's not a bad ring. It's solid. It's not great. It's solid. Okay, we've got 3 left to go. Our next ring is another 2-stone. Nope, it's not a gem. It's a ring. Okay, has 73% total resist on it, so we'll keep that on there. Maximum mana, we'll leave that. And interesting, so it adds 32 damage to attacks. We'll leave that on there. We don't care so much about the specifics there, but it is all elemental damage. Now, immediately, there's not a whole lot of results, but we're finding rings that are comparable to ours for as little as 1 chaos. So this is a pretty good illustration of the difference between having physical damage on rings and having elemental damage on rings. Typically, physical damage does a lot better on rings than elemental damage. So, I'm thinking, even though ours does have an extra crafting slot on it, I think it could take another resist. Let me check. Yes, it could. It could be made to be tri-res. So why don't we go ahead and add 20 to this resistance rating, so that would bump it up to 93, and just see what rings that are around that are sitting at. And now we're looking at more like 3C or 4C, and the cost of actually crafting that onto the ring would be about 2 alchs. So it's probably not worth it to actually craft that on. What we will do is that would be a ring that we would throw into the Regal tab, and it might be a ring that whenever I'm picking out things to run through the recipe, I might strategically not choose to vendor that one because I think that I can get the 4 fuse out of it. So we'll see. Okay, our next to last ring is another 2-stone ring, and I believe what I just saw was some elemental damage, so it's probably going to be about the same story. Same old story. Okay, we'll leave the accuracy on. It's not great, but it's not bad. It's not nothing. And we can leave the elemental damage to attacks on, and we'll also leave the mana gen on because that is a pretty spitfire roll. Here's my soda. Nothing was found, so that could be a good sign. And this ring also does have a 6 left crafting into. Probably just going to peel off this elemental damage. And we found one result. It is selling for an X. So a comparison of our 2 rings. It's actually the exact same base. Ours is also a fire and cold resist with 16%. This one has a little bit of increased elemental damage with weapons. It's not a great roll. The accuracy is clearly superior to ours. It has a middle-of-the-road evasion roll. The mana regen is just a skosh higher than ours, and it has the plus 13 to all elemental resistances. So that gives it a grand total of 71% resist, whereas ours is sitting at the 67. So just a little bit lower. So really the things that are setting this ring apart from ours is only the increased elemental damage with weapons and the accuracy and the evasion. But the evasion's pretty negligible at that low. This one also does have a crafting slot open to it. I think an X for that ring is a bit of a reach. Maybe not though. I mean, it really just all comes down to, that one person. All it takes is one person. So we're not going to price ours at an X. What we're going to do with ours is we're going to probably price it at 50 fuse. 50 fuse. All right, and our last ring of this video is a topaz ring. So it's got a lightning base on it. It is plus 29%. All right. We'll leave the evasion on. It's not terrible. Let's see, that is elemental damage, right? Yes, it is. We'll just leave on the aggregate damage. And we want to leave the dex on? Nah, it's so low. And then let's take off the cold spell damage. And the lightning We did find one result here. It is a corrupted ring, and it has the corrupted ring has a very good elemental damage roll on it, decent accuracy, pretty good evasion. 7C is a pretty reasonable price for that ring. All things considered. It's sitting at 88% total resist, whereas ours is at 67. Now ours does have an open crafting slot, which it looks like it can take a prefix. So on our ring, we could add another elemental damage, we could add physical damage, we could also put armor, evasion, energy shield, mana, or life. So I'm probably going to price our ring. This is going to be one of those instances where I'm actually going to price our ring over what we saw a comparable ring at to start out with. I'm actually going to price our ring up at I'm going to price our ring up at 40 fuse. So that was the last ring, and if you think about everything that we we've had a lot of stuff that bricked, but we had some things that we thought might be worth looking into. We looked into them, and only one of those did we find that weren't worthy of getting a spot outside of the Regal tab. If you looked at the combined value of everything out of all of those, if somehow we just had a miracle and we sold everything what we priced it at, from the get-go, which won't happen. It never happens. But if it did happen, we would be looking at somewhere in the neighborhood of probably like a 3 exalt profit just off of 17 chaos. So now, keeping in mind that pricing is a bit subjective, and value is definitely in the eye of the beholder. So none of these might sell. Some of them might sell. All of them might sell at different prices. It's hard to tell. Maybe in the future, what I might do is I might get like a spreadsheet or something and keep track of what we initially listed for, and then write down when it actually sells, and then bring a video to you kind of showing you like what the actual profit margin was on it. That sounds like a pretty cool little science experiment type thing that we could do, just to show that you can still make some decent money off of alching rings and such. So there is some luck involved to it, but basically by doing a large amount, you're trying to even out that RNG. So anyways, this is going to conclude this 2-video series. I hope that you found some parts of it interesting, and if you have any comments or any questions, feel free to leave them below in the comments section, or you can contact me in game. I'm always open to any kind of discussion or questions that you might have. If you want me to do some price checks or help you do some price checks, I'd be more than happy to do that. So thank you so much for joining me, and game on.